Picture this. It's the summer of 1147.
Right.
A massive fleet of, like, heavily armed Crusaders is sailing from northern Europe, and they're heading straight for Jerusalem.
Right, the classic crusade route.
Exactly. But as they hit the Atlantic coast, they get caught in this terrifying, just ship-splintering storm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they end up stranded in Portugal. I mean, they're battered, they are completely broke, and they're literally thousands of miles from the Holy Land.
Not ideal.
No, not at all. So the local king, he walks down to the docks and makes them this highly pragmatic offer. He basically says, help me conquer the towering, heavily fortified city of Lisbon, and I will give you all the loot you can carry to fix your ships.
I mean, it is just one of the most incredible left turns in military history. You know, it's a total accident of weather that fundamentally redrew the map of the Iberian Peninsula.
It really is. But the real question here is, what does a stranded fleet of medieval mercenaries have to do with, like, an ancient Roman border wall? Or, for that matter, our listener Mike playing in the dirt of a vineyard as a kid?
Right, that's the real puzzle.
Yeah. Well, Mike, this deep dive is entirely for you, because today we're taking a massive stack of your personal sources.
Yeah, we've got historical timelines, medieval chronicles, etymological records.
And your own family notes, too. And we are tying them all together. Our mission today is to trace the epic history of your mother Emmi's birthplace, Mainz, and prove how your childhood memories and your family name, Nafin, are just intimately bound to ancient empires and medieval holy wars.
It's a staggering scope, really. I mean, we aren't just looking at isolated dates on a timeline here. We are tracking the physical movement of a bloodline through the very bedrock of Europe.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand your family's DNA, Mike, we really have to look at the dirt under their feet.
Literally.
Literally, yeah. Long before Mainz was this bustling modern city, it was basically the prime real estate of the ancient world.
Geography really is destiny here, you know? Like, the reason Mainz exists where it does is entirely due to the river and the soil.
Right.
If we rewind to about 4000 BC, so during the Stone Age.
Way back.
Yeah, way back. We see the arrival of the Bankeramic culture. So the linear pottery culture. They were Europe's first true farming communities.
And they just stumbled on this spot.
Well, they actually bypassed perfectly good land elsewhere, specifically to settle around Mainz. And the reason is the loess.
The loess.
Yeah, it's this incredibly nutrient-rich, wind-blown sediment that was left over from the Ice Age. It's basically an agricultural gold mine. So archaeologists have actually found their settlements, their stone tools, and their graves concentrated right there in that specific dirt.
So early humans find a spot where the crops basically, I mean, they grow themselves, right next to the Rhine River, which serves as this prehistoric superhighway that naturally snowballs, I'd imagine.
Oh, it accelerates rapidly. Like through the Bronze and early Iron Ages, so we're talking 2200 to roughly 450 BC, we start seeing these massive burial mounds appearing. The river trade routes are moving bronze, amber,
salt, all the big commodities.
Exactly. It turns this territory into an economic powerhouse.
Yeah.
And that immense wealth and continuous habitation is, well, it's what eventually attracts the Celts.
Now, when I read the sources about the Celts arriving around 450 BC, I noticed they didn't really operate the way we usually picture ancient civilizations.
No, not at all.
Right, like they weren't building these sprawling grid cities. The Vangiones tribe and the Trevuri, a bit further north, they built something called oppida.
That's right. So an oppidum isn't a traditional city. It's a highly fortified hill settlement. Because the Celts understood that sitting flat on the riverbank just made you a giant target.
Yeah, you're just asking to be raided.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they sought out high elevations, like the major oppidum at the Dunsberg near Gießen. They would enclose these hilltops with massive timber and earth walls.
Wow.
Gave them, defensive sightlines and a secure hub to control all those farming estates dotted around the Mainz Valley.
And what's brilliant to me is that the Celts essentially pulled off an ancient corporate naming rights deal that lasted for millennia.
They really did.
Because when they set up camp, they worshipped a local deity named Mogons. Right?
Okay.
So centuries later, when the Romans show up and pave over the area, they actually keep the branding.
Yeah, they do.
They name their new city Mogontiacum, which eventually evolves into the modern name, Mainz.
The cultural footprint was just incredibly deep. But, by 100 BC, that Celtic stronghold was facing a pretty severe existential threat. Germanic tribes began pushing relentlessly from the east, just crossing the Rhine.
Right.
And Julius Caesar actually documented this violent grinding friction between the Celts and the Germanic tribes right around 58 to 50 BC.
But the Rhine wasn't just a local border at that point. I mean, it was the bleeding edge of the known world for them. And whenever a lucrative trade route turns into a violent flashpoint, Rome's ears definitely perk up.
Oh, absolutely.
They hate border friction.
Rome despises instability, especially when it threatens their expansion, The geopolitical nightmare on the Rhine basically forced Rome's hand. They looked at that contested river crossing and just decided, okay, we have to lock this down militarily.
Which catapults us right into the Roman era. And Mike, this is where the grand sweep of history literally lands in your childhood backyard.
It really does.
Because in 13 or 12 BC, the Roman general Drusus marches in and establishes Castrum Mogontiacum, just a massive military camp.
Yeah, this is the definitive birth of Mainz as a permanent fortified city. The Romans needed this anchor point to project power across the Rhine. But they didn't just hunker down in Mainz.
Oh, they never do.
Right. They aggressively expanded outward to seize the tactical high ground.
Right, because if you're Rome, you don't just build a fort, you build a buffer zone.
Exactly.
Which leads them about 15 kilometers east of Mainz to Hochheim. And the name literally translates to home on the height.
The Romans leveraged that elevation perfectly, too. About 5 kilometers north of the Hochheim vineyards, Drusus constructed a massive earthwork fort called Hochheim.
Which got expanded later, right?
Yeah, heavily expanded around 74 AD. And if you march just 20 kilometers further north from there, you hit the ultimate expression of Roman engineering, the limes.
The limes is just mind-boggling. I mean, it wasn't just a line on a map. It was a physical, heavily fortified border wall stretching all across Germany.
Yeah?
We are talking about hundreds of miles of deep ditches, sheer palisade walls, stone watchtowers spaced out every few hundred meters.
Fully established around 100 AD, yeah.
It's insane.
It was a complete logistical marvel. I mean, it was designed to control immigration, regulate trade, and, frankly, just completely intimidate the Germanic tribes.
Yeah, I'd be intimidated.
Right. And all of that military infrastructure required a massive support system behind it, which is right where Hochheim sits.
And that actually brings us to the detail in your family notes, Mike, that completely blew my mind. When you were a boy playing in the dirt of the Hochheim vineyards, you dug up a carved stone.
Yep.
Now, considering we just established this entire area was the military supply chain for the Roman Empire, I have to guess you weren't just playing with a cool rock.
Definitely not.
Right. Like, could that have been a piece of a Roman villa? Because I know they planted vineyards there.
What's fascinating here is that the historical and geographic context overwhelmingly supports that. I mean, the Romans didn't just drink wine for fun.
Right.
It was a daily sanitary ration for the legions, because the water often just wasn't safe to drink.
Oh, wow, of course.
So they brought viticulture to the sunny slopes of the main river. It is highly, highly likely Mike unearthed a remnant of a villa rustica. So a massive Roman agricultural estate.
But wait, if it wasn't a wine estate, what else could a carved stone in a vineyard be? Like a grave?
Absolutely. That's the second possibility. It could be a spiritual or memorial marker.
Yeah.
Roman farmers and soldiers frequently erected these small altars to gods like Mercury or the matrons, so the mother goddesses.
Okay, yeah.
They'd put them right along the main roads. So it could have been an ancient spiritual offering.
I can actually think of a third option, just based on how people operated back then. When the Roman Empire finally collapsed and the legions marched away, they left all these massive stone forts like Hochheim just sitting there. And I imagine medieval farmers weren't going to spend weeks mining fresh rock when they had a totally vacant Roman fort nearby, right?
Precisely. They turned the Hochheim fort into a giant free quarry.
Wow.
I mean, medieval communities loathed cutting new stone. For centuries, locals carted precision-cut Roman masonry away to build churches, houses, and, yes, the retaining walls of the Hochheim vineyards.
So Mike's stone could easily have been cut by a Roman military engineer, sat in a defensive fort for 400 years, and then got hauled off by a local farmer to prop up some grapevines.
Very possible.
You were literally dismantling Roman infrastructure, Mike. Now, your sources do include a quick legal caveat about the Hessen Monument Protection Law, and I just want to clarify something. Reporting a find, like a carved stone, to the Unterdenkmalschutzbehörde, the Lower Monument Protection Authority, isn't about getting a slap on the wrist.
Or going to Roman jail or anything.
Right, exactly.
It's not at all. Archaeologists desperately rely on chance discoveries from people like Mike. When you plow up a roof tile or a carved block, that single data point can be the exact puzzle piece they need to map a lost Roman cemetery.
Right.
Or an undocumented villa rustica. When you report it, they don't confiscate your vineyard. They just log the coordinates. You might even get your name on a little placard in the local museum.
That's so cool. So Mainz goes from a prehistoric farming hub to this impenetrable Roman border fortress. But centuries later, the dynamic flips completely. Mainz stops defending its borders and actually starts projecting its own power outward.
Yeah, it does.
Which leads to one of the most bizarre detours in medieval history.
So we're entering the High Middle Ages now. The archbishops of Mainz have risen to become the arch-chancellors of the Holy Roman Empire.
So they're powerful.
Very. They aren't just local priests anymore. They are geopolitical heavyweights.
And in 1147, Pope Eugene III calls for the Second Crusade. Now, wait, hold up. Let's pause here. A crusade, by definition and brand identity, was entirely focused on reclaiming Jerusalem and the Holy Land.
Traditionally, yes.
But the sources say the Pope declared that fighting the Moors, so the Almoravids and Almohads down in Spain and Portugal, carried the exact same spiritual rewards. How does a pope just legally and spiritually rubber stamp the Iberian Peninsula into a crusade without people crying foul?
Well, it was a wildly controversial yet highly pragmatic maneuver.
Okay.
The Pope realized that the Christian kingdoms in Spain and Portugal were fighting this brutal territorial war against Islamic empires. By legally equating the Iberian conflict with the Jerusalem conflict, the Pope essentially created a two-front holy war.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he incentivized knights from the Holy Roman Empire to clear out the enemies in Europe's own backyard before marching east.
Which brings us back to that massive fleet of Crusaders from the Rhineland, England, and Flanders in the summer of 1147.
Right, the ones from the beginning.
Yeah. So they set sail, aiming for Jerusalem, but 12th century nautical travel was a total nightmare. They are sailing these bulky, single-masted cog ships. When that horrific storm hits them in the Atlantic, they are nearly annihilated.
It was sheer logistical terror. They were battered, seasick, taking on water. I mean, they had no choice but to limp into the harbor of Porto in June.
So King Afonso VI of Portugal and the local bishop, Pedro Pitonhas, look out at their harbor and see thousands of the most heavily armed, battle-hardened mercenaries in Europe just sitting there trying to patch their boats.
And King Afonso seizes the opportunity of a lifetime.
I bet he did.
He essentially says, I know you're headed to Jerusalem, but I have a Muslim-controlled city, Lisbon, that I desperately need to conquer. It's heavily fortified. If you stay and break those walls for me, I will grant you all the plunder you can carry.
And the church backed it up, too.
Exactly. The church would grant them the spiritual absolution they were seeking in the Holy Land anyway.
I mean, it's an offer they literally can't refuse. And this is where the people of Mainz step into the spotlight. The Crusaders agree, and the Rhinelanders, led by nobles like Count Arnold III of Aerschot and Christian of Gestel, they make up the most crucial contingent.
Yeah, they were essential.
The Anglo-Norman Chronicle of the Siege, the De Expugnatione Lisbonense, explicitly names the Moguntini.
The men of Mainz.
Right. And another chronicler, Rahuin, specifically notes molti de Moguntia, meaning many from Mainz.
But it wasn't just their numbers that mattered there. It was their specific engineering expertise.
Oh.
Yeah, the Middle Rhine Valley had the highest density of stone castles in the world.
Oh, that makes sense.
The men of Mainz understood how to work stone, and more importantly, how to break it. When King Afonso looked at the towering, seemingly impregnable walls of Lisbon, he knew standard infantry just wouldn't work. He needed the Rhinelanders to build massive siege engines.
And they delivered, didn't they? They built these multi-story rolling siege towers to literally bridge the walls. They also engaged in sapping.
Yeah, sapping is terrifying.
It really is. For anyone who doesn't know, that's where you dig a tunnel under the enemy stone wall, you prop it up with wooden beams, and then you set the wood on fire so the tunnel collapses and bucks the whole wall down with it. It's just incredible engineering.
The siege was brutal. It lasted from July 1st all the way to October 26th. The Rhinelanders stormed the harbor on August 24th and then finally breached the main walls using those tunnels and towers on October 25th.
Wow.
And that forced the city to capitulate the very next day.
It was a massive victory, but it obviously came with a heavy cost. The chronicles actually record a specific casualty from Mike's hometown, a knight named Heinrich von Mainz, Heinricus de Moguntia, Miles, who fell during the siege.
Yeah. But for the survivors, though, the rewards were generational. They took the promised loot, sure, but King Afonso also offered them land if they stayed.
And a lot of them did stay, right?
They did. Many of these Rhinelanders founded entire new towns in Portugal, like Vila Franca de Xira and Azambuja. These towns were explicitly settled by Francos, which was the local term for the Rhinelanders. Some even took high-ranking church positions under the new Bishop of Lisbon, Gilbert of Hastings.
That's wild. You have an entire generation of guys who left the Rhine expecting to die in the deserts of the Middle East, and instead they become the founding fathers of medieval Portuguese towns.
It's an amazing pivot.
But how does this grand military sweep connect to Mike's mother, Emmi, and their specific family name?
Well, this is where we transition from the sweeping military chronicles over to the intricate etymological records Mike provided.
Right.
So Emmi's maiden name is Nafin, or sometimes it's spelled Nafin. It is an exceptionally rare name today.
Where does a name like Nafin even come from?
It derives from the Middle High German word Naf, which translates to a bowl or a drinking cup. In the Middle Ages, surnames weren't just random, they were occupational tags.
Ah, like Smith or Baker?
Exactly. So if you were an Naffin, you were likely a potter throwing clay bowls, a cup maker, or maybe an innkeeper pouring ale from those cups.
So it's this deeply localized working-class name, and the sources point to a specific record in 1350. The Eberbach Monastery rent book lists a man named Heinricus Nafin de Hatteheim living in Hattenheim. That is just 30 kilometers from Mainz.
Exactly. We can physically place a man making bowls or running an inn under the Nafin name right in the geographic orbit of Mike's ancestors.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because while Heinricus is making bowls in Hattenheim, the Nafin name had already gone global, or at least medieval global.
Yes, it had.
Remember those Rhinelanders, the Moguntini, who stayed in Iberia after the Crusades?
The historical crossover is just stunning. In 1255, so nearly a century before the Hattenheim record, a man named Johannes Nafin, Teutonicus.
Meaning Johannes Nafin, the German.
Exactly. He is recorded as a major landowner in Portugal, right near Santarém.
And Santarém was one of the towns heavily co-settled by Germans after the Lisbon campaign. Nafin is just the Latinized spelling of the German Neffin.
It pushes even further south, too. By 1311 in Spain, the records show a Guillermo Nafin operating as a highly paid mercenary for King Emmi II of Aragon, fighting in Murcia.
It is the ultimate game of historical telephone. You take this hyperlocal surname of a Mainz Potter Nafin, and it travels thousands of miles south in the baggage train of Crusaders and mercenaries.
Yep.
And over generations, the local Spanish and Portuguese accents just chip away at the Germanic pronunciation. Nafin evolves into the Iberian surnames Nafim with an M and Nafin with an accent over the I.
And the ultimate irony of all this is that those localized Iberian variations, Nafim and Nafin, still exist in Portugal and Spain today. Meanwhile, the original root name, Nafin, has gone practically extinct in modern Germany.
Wow. When you lay all of these sources out, Mike, the picture of your mother, Emmi, is completely transformed. I mean, she wasn't just a woman from a German city. She was born a Nafin in Mainz, meaning her bloodline carries the echo of this entire staggering narrative.
It radically redefines the concept of family history.
Yeah.
Emmi's ancestors didn't just watch history happen, they were the mechanism of it. They likely stood on the fortified timber walls of the Celtic oppidum at the Dinsburg.
Yeah.
They planted the grapes and walked the exact Roman soil where you, Mike, dug up that carved stone in Hochheim. And men bearing the ancient root of her surname engineered the siege towers that broke the walls of Lisbon in 1147.
You are quite literally tied to an unbroken chain of human endeavor, Mike. From the Stone Age farmers tracking the lowest soil to the Roman legions guarding the limes, right through to the Crusader knights rewriting the borders of Europe.
Which leaves us with a provocative final thought for you to mull over, Mike.
Go for it.
When you hold that Roman stone you found in the dirt, or when you simply say your mother's maiden name out loud, you are actively interacting with the surviving artifacts of a massive 2,000-year-old web.
Right.
It makes you wonder, what other seemingly mundane physical objects or quiet family habits or old heirlooms might be sitting in your living room right now quietly waiting to tell the next chapter of an ancient story.
It makes you look at every old stone and every family recipe completely differently. Mike, thank you so much for sharing these incredible sources with us and for letting us take this custom deep dive into your family's epic past. Keep digging in those vineyards.